I keep meeting my birth mom, but she doesn't know it's me. I waited in the parking lot for the restaurant she worked at to close. When she walked out, we said hi. Then I told her there's something serious I needed to tell her. I said I was sorry for keeping this from her for so long, but I'm your biological son. She didn't react at first, until I actually pulled out the letter she wrote for me at birth. Then she started bawling, like screaming and crying at the same time. I didn't even have to finish the whole "I'm your son" speech. She just saw the letter and knew. It was the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Next thing I know, she's hugging me, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. Of course it is, and we're just there hugging and crying in the parking lot. It hit her hard though. Her legs gave out for a second, so I had to actually hold her up while she's still hugging me for a minute. What really got me was her saying to me, "Look how big you got." Also, hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant up. She wouldn't take no for an answer. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie inside, and talked. There was so many things we talked about. She told me the second time I came to the restaurant she got a feeling, but for her, it was hard to believe it was me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down, because she told me for years after I was adopted, she saw kids that would be my age, and used to think they were me. Then she would be crying in public. It messed with her mind a lot, and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she saw me, getting her hopes up like that. She says, I look so much like my biological dad when he was younger though. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other, in case I ever reached out to one of them, so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have hope about finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for this future scenario. She told me about how they wanted to keep me, especially my biological dad. He didn't want me to be adopted, but he knew they had to because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get past it after I was born, she told me. That's why he didn't leave anything, because he didn't want to believe he might not see me again. We talked for hours, until almost 2 in the morning. They closed at 11. She just wanted to know everything about me, but her main thing was, am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her thank you for helping to give me this life. We both cried again. She cried the most. Everything was very emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy, but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday, she was hoping I would find her. That's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought maybe I resented her, wasn't told I'm adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault, and I did right going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile, it made me emotional sometimes. Makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger your whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She asked me if we could have dinner soon to keep talking, and if at some point in the future, if I'm interested, come over to her house so I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged numbers. After I left, she sent a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift, that she didn't know if it would ever come. My girlfriend came over and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, BTW, these were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we got to open up to each other. Update 2. Lots of you asked to let you know how it goes. Meeting my biological dad, and to say it was emotional is an understatement. I've been feeling so many things since this all happened. We met a few days ago. Was originally supposed to be almost 2 weeks ago, but things kept coming up. Work, and then I got sick for days, but we made it happen. This made me more nervous because I didn't know anything about him. With my bio mom, it was different because I watched her from far and got to know her a little before it came out. I asked my bio mom if she could be there too, just because she knows him better, so it was the two of us waiting for him at this park. He was already crying before we even got to him. This guy is strong too, so he pulled me in for the biggest bear hug and cried. He told me he wants me to know that they loved me so much, and he loves me. I lost count how many times he'd come back in for one more hug. This definitely got to him, and he kept saying, "Thank you, God," a few times. Looking at my face, the feelings, man, the feelings, we had so many of them. Hearing him tell me how much they love me even back then, it meant so much for me to hear that, and that had me holding him tight too. I'm sure to everyone at the park it was weird seeing 3 crying people. My bio dad said he cried so many times just driving over here. He didn't think he had any more tears until he saw us. When we were all sitting down, it hit me that my bio mom was not lying when she said we look alike. Obviously he's older but still has similarities. He brought gifts too, which was a surprise. It was really nice, he told me. I don't have to keep them if I don't want it. But he felt weird not coming with anything, and he's wanted to give this to me for a long time. One was a teddy bear holding a picture frame of him at the hospital holding me. He was 15 years old. It's still crazy to realize that. And then the other thing was a journal. The journal thing was stuff he said he started writing to me years after I was adopted. He was in therapy, and that helped him to cope, thinking he would give them to me one day. His way of still feeling connected to me. I haven't read everything yet, but some of the pages were his thoughts, and like he's talking to me. How he felt when they found out she was pregnant, then the adoption, everything going on in his mind when he first got to hold me as a baby. I didn't even know he was at the hospital too. It was not what I was expecting. It really got to me. I read some more of what he wrote last night that really got me crying. I'm sad to think how much this affected them emotionally for years. Also, I think it's pretty sweet he wanted to write this for me. We talked about his own life, which was pretty hard. His struggles with home life. life and the feelings he had about giving me up. Then he wanted to know everything about me, basically with the same questions my bio mom had. I made sure they knew they made the right decision, because my life was pretty great. He looked like he wanted to cry when he knew that, because that's all they hoped for, and it was something he always wondered about for years. My bio mom left a bit after we were more comfortable so we could talk more in private, once it didn't feel too awkward between us. From there, he told me stories about how he met my bio mom. Sometimes he'd point out stuff he notices about me that reminds him of her or me and him having similar likes. Example, I love eating mangoes. I can eat them all day, and that's what I bought when we bought snacks at the park. He told me my bio mom was obsessed with mangoes before she got pregnant. While pregnant, she craved it even more. Just cool info to know, even if it's random stuff. It's still stuff we have in common, and we both have lots. Both like hiking, playing pool. He was a swimmer in college, and I was on a swim team in high school. Both love rock music, especially 90s. My bio dad was really open about sharing everything, like he really was getting ready for this meeting. He hoped it would happen, and he prayed every day to see me again, because he had so many things he wanted to tell me. Overall, really good first meeting. I'm glad how it went. He's open to the idea of meeting my parents. After I told them about all this, because they definitely want to meet my bio parents again, if I'm comfortable with that. Obviously, if my bio parents are too. Let's see when that happens. I don't know how it's gonna feel for me. They've met each other before I was even born, but I never had them at the same place, so that'll be interesting. Me and my parents met up yesterday to have breakfast so I could tell them everything. My mom was so happy how it went. She actually cried too when I was telling them about both their reactions. My dad was proud because he knew how hard it was the months after finding my bio mom and not really wanting to make contact yet. I'm really happy to have their support, because it's hard not to feel guilty about wanting to know more, my bio parents. They gave me a really good life, so for a while it's felt like maybe to them, I'm showing them that wasn't good enough for me, and I'd rather have my bio parents. But they told me many times they want me to do this for me, and to know how much I love them. And I really do. Finding them and meeting them was hard, but it was so worth it to me, and seeing their reactions made it feel even more worth it. Still can't believe it sometimes. Story number 2.
6 months later, divorcing my husband was the biggest mistake of my life. If I could give anyone a piece of advice for divorce, it would be to not do it under normal circumstances. If your spouse is beating you or threatening you or your children, then of course get out and fast. In my case, there was no abuse. We were together for 8 years. That was mostly good, and we have 4 kids. Right around 5 years, I got a promotion at work, and I got it in my head that my ex-husband was dragging me down, or at least holding me back from more success and a better life. We never had a lot of money, but with my promotion, I was now making more than he was. I started working longer hours, and at the same time, his hours were cut, so he was at home more. I really began to resent him because he was home, and because he got to spend time with our kids. Most nights when I got home, they were already getting ready for bed, if not already sleeping. After a few months of my new job, it was clear to me that things were not going well at home without me there. Some nights the dishes weren't done when I got home, or the kids had not eaten, or whatever else I could think of to be mad at him about. It really didn't matter. He kept saying that he would try harder, but that it was hard being home all the time. That always made me really mad. For the next couple years, things kept getting worse. My hours weren't any shorter, and his were on and off full-time. There was no convenient time for him to be working full-time because of my hours, but we also needed the money. Whenever he would tell me that he could get extra hours, I would always complain. And the less hours he worked, the more I complained that he wasn't bringing in enough money. Whenever he brought up the contradiction, I would tell him that he needed to figure it out. I knew that it would bother him, so I started saying that a lot and for everything that I could. I really started to resent him, and I pulled away from him. I knew that it was hurting him, but I didn't care. If he didn't want to be hurt, then he would at least try to make me happy. I used that same thing to justify when I started to talk to another guy at work. I thought he was just a friend, but talking at work turned into texting at home, and then pictures and videos, and then trying to sneak some alone time with him. I knew that it was wrong, but it made me feel so alive, and my husband had not made me feel like that in years. I was tired of being unhappy, and I was doing this for me. The worst was the night that I came home at a reasonable time and found that he had cleaned the whole house, cooked the whole family dinner, and picked out a movie for all of us to watch together. This would have made me swoon a couple years earlier, but that night I couldn't even look at him, and I pretended to be sick. I spent the rest of the night in bed while he waited on me and checked on me, and even made me different food and brought it to me in bed. It made me feel terrible, and then it made me angry that he made me feel that way. And by the end of the night, I was texting with the other guy. Over the next month or two from that night, it did not matter what he did. He was wrong just for breathing most days. He would get so upset with how I was treating him, and I would just wait and egg him on into losing it, because I knew it would happen eventually. After most of the fights we had, he would apologize for whatever I told him he did wrong, if there even was something, but I never did. I would usually find a way to make him feel even worse. I knew that I was right because he was wrong, and that was all that mattered to me. I even pretended that I didn't care when he found out about my relationship with the guy from work. It really destroyed me inside to see him holding back tears, but I wasn't going to let him see that. He was at his weakest, and that was when I chose to tell him that I wanted a divorce. I could almost hear his heart shattering inside his chest. He talked and fought and said that we could work through it together. I really wasn't interested in fixing our marriage, but I mostly ended things with the other guy, but only because I knew I could get it back if I wanted it. I could see that he was trying, and occasionally I would let him know, but for the most part, I kept being a huge beach to him for any and all reasons that I could think of. I'm not sure how much more the man could have done to make me happy, besides finding a job that paid enough for me to not have to work at all. He said that he was looking, but looking and finding are two different things. It was around this time that I discovered this group and a few others. I started posting things about him, from my perspective only, and I got so much positive feedback for how I was feeling that I knew I was right. The more I posted, the more validation that I got. It wasn't just me who knew that ex-husband wasn't worth keeping around. I had the whole internet telling me how terrible he is. I started saying awful things to him and even outright ignoring him. I was so confident with mine and everyone else's opinion that I contacted a lawyer and within a couple weeks had filed for divorce. I continued to use this site and a couple others to validate my feelings and for encouragement to go through with it, and finally it was done. It went pretty smoothly. Ex-husband didn't ask for much besides to not get divorced and to try to work it all out. I didn't care about that though. He was broken, but I was free. I could do whatever I wanted without having to feel any guilt or answer to anybody. It was an amazing feeling of freedom. It didn't last long though. In the first month after he moved out, I missed garbage day 3 times. There was also rarely a single clean dish, and the laundry sat in piles so long that I had to start doing the sniff test to see if it could be worn again. I also never saw my kids more miserable. My oldest had seen some of the messages from the other guy months earlier, and she knew that ex-husband still wanted to try to work it out. It didn't take her long to stop talking to me at all, except to say that she wanted to go to ex-husband house. The others all told me that they wanted to live with ex-husband too. I did my best to try to make them happy, but I ended up just buying them toys all the time, and the happiness only lasted minutes. I also was having a lot of trouble with work. Being alone, I couldn't work all those extra hours that I was expected to. I finally gave in and started calling ex-husband to watch the kids. He would always come over as soon as he could, and he always asked me if I needed anything. When I would get home, I would find clean dishes and laundry and even dinner sometimes. He would never say too much after I got home. He would just say to call him if I needed anything and leave. One night, he took out the garbage and brought it to the curb because it was garbage night, and I forgot again. He always looked so sad when it was time to go. Finally, after a couple months, my friends convinced me to go out on a date. It was for dinner and a movie, and I was excited and hopeful, but at dinner, I started getting a feeling of overwhelming guilt. It got so bad that I ended up not even going to the movie. A week and about 1,000,000 tears later, I was on a therapist's couch. I told her everything that had happened, starting with the promotion that I got at work. She did not agree with me or with any of the encouragement to divorce that I got. I ended up in her office 2 and sometimes 3 times a week, and the more that I talked to proved that I was right, the more that I started to see how wrong I was. It was truly heartbreaking. I don't know if I cried as much in my whole life as I did in the first month in her office. After about $2,000 of therapy sessions, I learned that my ex-husband had his faults, but I figured out that mine were so much worse. I did so many awful things and said awful things that I wouldn't want to be with me, but he did. I still remember him asking me in the meeting with the lawyer to please not go through with it. I did go through with it though, and then later I bragged on here how great it felt. I was so wrong, and now I can see it. A couple weeks ago, I went outside with him when he was leaving the house. I asked him about getting back together. When he looked at me, his eyes were full of tears and a couple went down his cheeks. He told me that he didn't know if he could. He said that the pain has been too much for too long and that if we got back together that I might just turn around and do it to him again. He said that he always thought that I would realize how much he loved me and stop up until I signed the divorce papers and let out a big, over-exaggerated sigh of relief. He said that hurt him more than anything else and that he doesn't know if he can ever trust me again. I don't blame him. I destroyed a man who, looking back, was a great husband. I deprived my kids of having a great father in the house with them, and I took his kids away from him. And me, the one who pushed for the divorce expecting happiness and a life of freedom, spend all my free time sitting at home or sitting on a therapist's couch. Story number 3. I found out that my best friend has fabricated her entire life. I met my best friend Jessie through a close friend of mine named B and her little sister Sharon. B and Sharon's father passed away from brain cancer less than a year ago, and this has brought us closer. He was also like a father to me. Jessie has a childhood history of lying, which we attributed to her being the youngest sister, and the fact that she didn't have many friends growing up. I have a large friend group outside of B and Jessie. After he passed, I ended up introducing both B and Jessie to this friend group, as Sharon got a boyfriend and started to spend most of her time with him. Jessie latched onto the group and got comfortable enough to hang out with them without me around. She uses B and I's car frequently as she doesn't have her own. B got her a job at the restaurant she worked at. We buy food at our apartment we know she likes. She eats dinner that I cook, drinks our alcohol, etc. She has never offered to pay us back or contribute to food and alcohol consumption, but we figured she was just forgetful. Shortly after I introduced her to the group, she confided in everyone that her mom may have lung cancer. We all were there for her and supported her while she was waiting for the test results. When they came back positive, we all offered to cook meals and send cards and letters, but Jessie declined, stating that none of that was necessary. It was caught early, and she just needed to have it removed. We never heard anything else about it, other than her mom was doing fine. In late March, she started casually seeing a member of the friend group named Jack. He lives about an hour away from us, but visits the group when he can. I had also been seeing someone named Peter. Jessie said that she and Jack had gotten really close, that they were possibly talking about dating, but that they were probably going to hold off because of the distance. During this time, she also got a new job as an engineer at a very prestigious company that was out of the area. It started as an internship but transitioned into more. She said that it was a mostly work-from-home position and that it paid incredibly well. When my birthday came around in June, we planned a big party in our friend group because 2 of our other friends have birthdays around the same time. It was a costume party where you show up as either a hero or a villain. About 2 hours before the party was supposed to start, Jessie texted B saying her mother had tried to take her life and was in the hospital, but that Jessie was still going to try and come to the party, just without a costume. I was very understanding. When she arrived, she took B and some of my other close friends into a private room away from the party and explained in detail what happened. Everyone still had fun, but it took a lot of joy away from the party. At the time, I was trying not to be selfish because I knew that her mom was important to her. Right after my birthday, I found out that Peter was manipulating me me and everyone else in my friend group into thinking he wanted a relationship with me, told me he wanted me to move cross-country with him, etc., only to find out that that was all a lie and he was using me for emotional intimacy. While I was going through this, Jessie was saying that Jack was doing the exact same thing to her. We sat on the couch and grieved together. I was sad for her. She dragged his name through the mud in our friend group, but continued to say she was seeing him just for sex now without any emotional involvement. A few days ago, Jessie confided in us that her mother's cancer had possibly come back. She had the scan results in a matter of days and said they were positive. We were there for her. I decided to do something nice for Jessie to try and show that I care. I am autistic, and I have a hard time offering physical and emotional comfort. I am an artist, and I was trying to draw her a picture of her horse and paint it with watercolors. I realized that I didn't have any pictures of her horse, so I reached out to Jack and asked for a description since I knew he had met her. He responded with, "Jessie has a horse?" I thought he was joking at first, but I very quickly realized he had no idea what I was talking about. Turns out he and Jessie hadn't been seeing each other at all. They had slept together a few times in April, but had cut it off after that. He provided screenshots of their conversations since then, and it was captured in 2 pictures. He also provided time-stamped photos of him literally out of state when she said that they supposedly were together. This started an entire spiral of realizing that nothing she had ever said actually made sense. I reverse image searched a photo she had sent us of her at a rodeo, and it was literally a doctored stock image. This is the only picture of her with a horse that she has ever sent and that I have ever seen. There is none on her social media or on her phone. I asked everyone in our friend group, and no one had seen pictures of her horse, and it isn't on any of her social media. There's almost no way that she has this job at this big company because she never graduated college and her position requires a college education. She also had previously used B's laptop to work, but upon checking computer history, the only thing it shows she was working on was a D&D campaign. She also is never in the location that the company is actually in, always seems to have the day off with PTO or be done with her work, and conveniently never has her card on her to pay for things or is locked out of her Venmo and will bring cash the next time she sees us, but somehow always forgets that she owes us money, almost as if she doesn't have any money to give us. She literally told Jack that she had a car worth $100K, but that she wrecked it. Neither B nor I have ever heard of this story. I started to remember things she told us that just didn't make any sense and felt like they had been taken out of our own lives. She said she was robbed at gunpoint, but the timeline of the police making an arrest and returning her belongings made no sense. I have a copy of the security footage of my phone because I had to turn it into my insurance. I have also had a gun put to my head by an ex-partner who I literally had to have arrested. She said her mom attempted to take her life, but Jessie's location never once said she was at a hospital, and B has seen her mom over FaceTime since then. No scars where there definitely would have been based on the details that Jessie provided. I have proof that at the time Jessie says she was at the hospital with her mom who was having multiple seizures literally last night, her location shows her sitting at home. Things in our home have also gone missing: chargers, grinders and their contents, clothing. Jessie is always the first to blame other people that have been in our home, but she literally has access to our apartment at all times. She has been there before when we aren't home. What if she's been having people over and claiming it's her apartment? Stuff has been moved and things have gone missing. I did some sleuthing and messaged her sisters on Instagram asking for a photo of Jessie's horse and offering my support with their mother's diagnosis. I'm anxiously awaiting a response. In the meantime, B and I have to see her tonight and put on the performance of a lifetime. Even if she isn't lying about her mom, the way that she manipulated me into offering her support during one of the lowest times of my life and lied about my friend to our entire friend group is enough for me to cut her off. We lied and said they were doing a battery check on our key fobs and asked her to bring hers with her tonight, as well as all of the clothes that she has of ours so we can take inventory and figure out what we need to buy for our winter wardrobe. She will not be getting the fob back or be borrowing any clothes. She will absolutely not be coming back with us to our apartment to stay and won't be left alone with any of our belongings. Examples of some other likely lies. She is a licensed mechanic even though she wasn't able to help me with an oil change because she didn't know how. Her dad was abusive. Said this after she found out that my dad decided to warpy me. Her ex was abusive. She said this after she found out that I survived 2 DV relationships. My Pukale necklace went missing after I gave it to her. Claims she lost it. Never bought me another one. She had a terminated pregnancy at 7 months. She said this after she found out about my termination due to the DV situation I was in and claimed it was for the same reason. Story number 4.
My 3 friends tried to drug a girl, so I let the whole town know. To put it simply, I was a little shit as a kid. I used to steal from stores and from my family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the street, smoked from the age of 12, and didn't give a shot about anyone but my friends. They were my real family, or so I thought, and the group of all 5 of us would cause trouble every single day. My parents, though in my later years have told me they should have been more effective in their discipline, really weren't to blame. I was just a mixed-up kid. I used to think that doing all this stuff made me cool. I can't really describe how superior I felt when I made grown adults afraid of me, but it made me feel powerful, and power was something I craved when I was younger. I could go on and on about my sins, but the fact is that I was just fucked in the head. So long story short, when I was 16, my parents finally had enough, and despite all my tantrums and screaming and even some physical violence against my dad, they decided to put me in a school for troubled youth. I call it a school, but what it really was a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways, while throwing in some literacy and numeracy classes along the way. Without going into too much detail, I'll say that this school changed me. While I was aggressive, violent, cocky, and near homicidal when I was first dumped on their doorstep, the men who ran this camp broke me down. I was there for just over a year. No phone calls, no visits home, no access to the outside world. For one whole year, these real-life hard-ass men taught me just how much of a shot stain I really was. By the end of my second summer, I was a changed kid. I had fought and screamed and gotten my ass kicked more times than I can count, but eventually, I was beaten down. These men taught me that real men simply don't act the way I did, and that the type of path I was headed down would lead me either to jail or death. They were brutally honest about it, especially this one counselor, Jay. By the end of my stay, I considered Jay a second father. Though I hated him at first for making me feel inferior, he really did me a favor teaching me how toxic my behavior was, and to this day, I still think of him as something of a hero. He was the main person who deemed me ready to return home. When I returned home, I had changed from an abusive little prick to a somewhat civilized young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous to go back, since I had adapted to the disciplinary school lifestyle, but I was also excited. I missed my friends, and hoped they would just accept me back, despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. To my relief, I was accepted back with open arms. One of my closest friends had moved states since I'd been away, but the other three were ecstatic to see me. Over the next few weeks, I settled down. I didn't spend a lot of time with them outside of school. My parents were kind of testing how much I'd matured since returning, and were setting boundaries on when I could go out, how long I could stay out, and where I could go, etc. I was determined to prove to them I wasn't the same fuck-up that had ruined their lives all those years, so I followed their rules and only really talked to my friends during school. All of this is relevant because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team all three friends were a part of, and one evening after practice, all my teammates were in the gym, sweaty and dirty, but pleased with ourselves. I was laughing and chatting with my three best friends, so much I didn't really notice that we were the last left in the gym, but that's when the conversation started turning bad. One of my friends, I'll call him F1 for simplicity, started telling me about a college party they were all planning on going to, and how they'd been crashing college parties for a few months now, since it was easy access to girls and booze. I was hesitant about it because I didn't think my mom and dad would agree to let me go, but then F1 started talking about this girl he was planning on inviting, a girl who went to the same school as us, but not one I thought F1 had any real relationship with. I knew her, but I didn't know her. He started to tell both my other friends and me that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while, and she kept making excuses, so he planned on taking her to the party, and finally, smashing. When I asked him, in a joking way, what makes you so sure she won't reject you again, he looked me dead in the eye and said as casually as you please, the most chilling sentence I have ever heard in my entire life. I'm just gonna slip something in her drink. It'll loosen her up, no problem. At first I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some fucked up joke, but they weren't laughing with me. When I asked him if he was serious, he told me he was sick of her bullshit games and knew she was just stringing him along, and that the pills would just make things easier. I could not believe my fucking ears. I excused myself from the conversation pretty quickly and practically bolted home, most likely driving through several stop signs, but I really don't remember. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends were just messing around. A few more days pass, and the conversation in the locker room is all but forgotten, though they hadn't shut up about the party and kept insisting that I just sneak out and join them. I got called a PC repeatedly for telling them I wasn't going because of my parents, but again, I just brushed it off. Then the shot finally hit the fan. During yet another after-school training session, we all end up being the last in the locker room again, and F1 does something I never would have expected in 1,000 fucking years. All three of them have been talking about the party this whole time. Then F1 starts rummaging through his gym bag. He tells us all to look at this and tosses F2 a small bag of little pink pills. Immediately, I feel the blood drain from my face, and like a bomb's going off in my head, a voice in my mind is screaming, "Holy shit, this is really happening. This is serious. Holy shit." It's really hard to describe what I was feeling when F1 started going into detail about how he planned on inviting the girl to the party, slipping something into her drink, and making use of one of the frat boys' bedrooms for a few hours. I was sick. Like literally could have hurled everything from my stomach all over the floor as I listened to all three of them talk about how awesome the party was going to be after just describing how they were planning to rape a girl. I couldn't take it, and again, I ran off. I actually did end up puking later that night, going over and over in my head what I had just witnessed. I almost couldn't believe it. These three boys had been my friends for 15 years. I thought of them as my own family, thought I knew them better than anyone, but 1 year away, and this happens? I'll tell you that I actually broke down crying that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long I took to actually get a grip and handle it. I knew I should have told someone, but in some fucked up way, my loyalties were still screwed. I know now what I should have done, but I was 17, and these were my best friends. I didn't want them to get into trouble, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't let this shit go down. So instead of reporting all I'd heard to an adult like a normal fucking person, I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. I went to F1 and told him not to do what he had planned. I told him it was stupid and dangerous and would ruin both his life and the life of the girl he was planning on drugging. He didn't even blink. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a pussy. He said that he hated how much I'd changed and had been trying to change me back with F2 and F3. He even told me how they'd been talking about me behind my back and how they'd planned to give me a turn on the girl once F1 was done with her, just to show me what I was missing out on. Then he said something I'll never forget. He told me, word for word, "I'm doing that little betch a favor. She's a fucking virgin, and after this party, your mom won't be the only one finally getting some." I punched him. We fought, and we both got sent home on suspension for fighting. I could not believe it. I was seething. My best friend had said that to me. My best friend had told me he was going to rape an innocent girl at a party, and I was a pussy for not wanting to join in. I was disgusted. It sickened me to my core, and I was done with him. My parents were disappointed. I had gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mom cried and my dad screamed at me. I know now that I should have told him, but after what F1 said to me, I had this insane notion in my head that I was going to get him back all on my own. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school, and the first thing I did was seek out F1. He was about as bashed up as I was, but he was sporting a nice black eye from where I'd hit him in the face. F2 and F3 were standing with him, and they all glared at me as I approached them. Then I did something that made me feel sick. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him, and that he was right. I had changed, and I hated what that school had done to me, and I wanted to go back to being the old me again. Surprisingly, they all bowed it. F1, and I even hugged it out, and I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. Now, for my dumbass teenage plan. Story number 5. A prejudiced bully ruined my life, so I obliterated hers. When I was in elementary school, I had a bully. I'll call her Aya, because it's the only nice thing I will ever do for her. It all started in the first grade. She was the instant popular girl because she talked about her time in Ghana. She was born and raised there up until she was 4 years old, when her parents immigrated to America, and I thought that was so cool, because the only immigrants I have ever known were from Mexico. I'm also Mexican, which is something you need to remember, because we lived in Texas. I asked her what was life like in Africa. She looked at me and said in a very smug voice, "A lot better than Mexico." I thought that was weird, but I let it go because we were kids at the time, and I think she just wanted to be cool or something. As the year went on, she always made offhanded comments about me being Mexican, and it was always directed towards me. It wasn't until the second grade when we were just learning this brand new word that we have never heard of before, prejudice. 7-year-old me at the time vaguely understood it because my mom taught me the words that was derogatory towards us and wanted me to be aware of them. Anyway, we were watching a cartoon about Martin Luther King Jr., and we were at a scene where the protesters were being unjustly arrested. I thought it was cruel and didn't think it was fair. Aya looked at me and shouted, "A Mexican like you would never understand," followed by a bad name for Mexican people. I was horrified being called that in the middle of class, and I looked at my teacher who just shrugged her shoulders and went back to the show. I couldn't believe it. We're learning about the civil rights movement, and I was called a term in front of everyone. I tried asking my teacher why didn't she say anything, because what A called me was a bad word towards me and my ethnicity. All she did was say, "It's just a word, sticks and stones." I ran home in tears and told my mom everything. She was upset at first, but at the time she told me that Aya probably didn't know that that word was a bad word towards Latin people, and maybe she'll figure it out when she's older or say sorry the next day. How wrong my mother was. For the next 4 years, Aya would throw racial slurs at me, calling me the Mexican who eats nothing but beans or a wetback because I must have crossed the Rio Grande River. I begged her every single time to stop, and I went to my teachers pleading with them for help, but they never did anything. It wasn't just the terms she threw at me. She would insult me for the way I looked, the way my hair was, why I was bigger compared to the other girls who were slim. She wasn't a model herself either. Things got worse in the 4th grade. I was going through a rough time because my mom was dating a man who drank beer as if prohibition ended. He also smoked heavily, and the smell will end up on my clothes, which added fuel for Aya's fire. I would always use me as an example about the dangers of smoking, pointing out how the smell was so bad that she constantly plugged her nose every time she walked by me. It led to rumors of me never taking a bath that followed me up until the end of 6th grade. At this time, my mom was starting to realize that Aya was not stopping, and she tried contacting the school, but all she would get was that it was just a disagreement between 2 classmates. She wrote notes for me to give to my teachers, but nothing would happen. And in the 5th grade, things really took a bad toll. My grandfather passed away, and his death hurt me so much that even to this day, I still feel that raw pain of his passing. Word got out to my school, and Aya walked up to me saying how sorry she was that my grandfather was gone. I naively thought that maybe, just maybe, she would stop being a bully and say, "Sorry for saying prejudiced things towards me." Nope. It's sad that he died to get away from you. I would too if I realized my granddaughter was so ugly. I broke into tears while she and a few of her friends laughed, and as always, none of my teachers did anything to stop her. I told my mom, who managed to finally get a hold of my teacher, and demanded that she do something about it, or else she was going to go up there and make her stop. So for the first time in the whole year, my teacher walked up to Aya and told her to stop being so mean to me. I looked at her and burst into tears, crying that she was being so mean. "It's because I'm black, isn't it?" Immediately my stupid teacher backed off. Aya would go on to use that phrase every single time any of our teachers even attempted to do something. Now you're probably wondering, how did she ruin my life? Well, I'm getting to it. Things slowly quieted down when I was in 6th grade, but she was plotting something. I used to draw anime a lot. I wasn't any good, but I practiced every single day, and slowly my skills were improving. I was drawing the main cast of Sailor Moon during free period, and it was a decent first attempt really. For once, there were no stray pencil marks, and I didn't have to erase as much. I left to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, my drawing was ruined. It had pen marks everywhere with the slurs and wetback in permanent marker all over it. I was devastated and broke down. I worked so hard on that drawing, and it was vandalized with hate. I looked over to a group of desks where Aya was sitting, and I saw her laughing. She and a couple of her girlfriends were saying how funny it was that I was crying over a stupid picture, and I saw that she had that stupid permanent marker on her desk. I marched up to her and yelled at her. I demand to know, what is it about me she hated so much? Why was she acting like this towards me when I did nothing to her? I was crying, I was screaming, and my teacher told both of us to go to the office. I thought we were finally going to solve the issue, but as always, I was wrong. My principal looked at the both of us and said that I should apologize. Me. What? Principal? Apologize for yelling at her? Just because you're upset over a drawing doesn't mean you have to yell at a classmate for it. Me. But she ruined my drawing. She wrote slurs all over it. I should point out that she even had permanent marker stains on her hands. Me. Why aren't you telling her that you don't tolerate racism in this school? Why are you always taking her side? Principal. I'm not taking sides, young lady, but those are just words. Sticks and stones. I honestly didn't know what to feel at that moment. I realized that Aya was getting away with her prejudice, and there was nothing I could do about it. I still refused to apologize, and the principal called my mom, who demanded that the principal do something about Aya, but nothing happened as always. After that incident, Aya was emboldened at the fact that she could get away with the bullying and made my life hell. She destroyed me. It was to the point where I could no longer draw again. Even to this day, if I even try to draw a character I liked, I would break into tears and just stop. My mom tried everything. She pleaded, she demanded, and she threatened. But my school just brushed it off as an overprotective single mom who just didn't like seeing her overly sensitive child hurt. In my mom's perspective, from what she told me, she watched as her happy-go-lucky little girl slowly morphed into a sad and combative teenager. I developed a hatred towards my own ethnicity, and I cried that I wished I was white because I hated being called those words, and I hated the way my face looked because I could see my Native American features. That's right, I'm indigenous too. She made me hate myself. It was only after elementary school did the bullying finally stop because she went to a different junior high school. But just because I was able to get away from her didn't mean that the effects of her bullying stopped. I had to go to therapy to get rid of the terrible things she said to me out of my head and slowly regain myself as a person. My family, who knew of the bullying, gathered around and gave me unconditional love and support, all the while telling me stories of our ancestors who started our family, how they fled Spain during the Texas Revolution. I even went to the tribe I was descended from to help gain a better understanding of my indigenous roots, and they helped me immensely as well. Aya and I ended up going to the same high school, but I avoided her like the plague because I wanted nothing to do with her or her bullcrap. Aya was a model student, and during Black History Month, we used to have an assembly where we talked about the great black figures in history. She would always go on the podium and talk about how proud she was of her ethnicity and that we should embrace everyone of different ethnicity, religion, and all that good stuff. It took all of my willpower and constant reminding of myself that what happened in elementary school was in the past to not laugh and roll my eyes. I just thought she was a piece of work. Story number 6.
Entitled mother tries to sue me when I defend myself from her daughter. I had a friend named Patricia when I was a sophomore, but when junior year rolled around, I noticed that Patricia was very toxic. She started to control where we would go in the mall when we hung out, where I sat in the cafeteria during lunch, stuff like that. She also acted like she was superior to other people. Many people didn't like her and complained a lot. I started to distance myself from her because I didn't like that type of behavior, and it was annoying. I also didn't want people I met to associate me with her and think that I acted the same way she did. Patricia did not like this. I guess she liked being in control somewhere in a relationship. Patricia didn't have many friends to begin with, so when I started not being her friend, she had nobody to hang out with. During winter break, I learned that she started hanging out with Dave, this guy in one of my classes. By the time we came back from winter break, they were making out in the halls, very touchy-feely with each other. Skip to summer of 2017, I saw Patricia and Dave literally everywhere I went. I went to the fair, and they were there too. I once went to the mall to get a custom-made umbrella for my cousin's birthday, and lo and behold, Patricia walks in, with her boyfriend in tow, and walks up to me and says, "Oh hey, didn't know you'd be here." I was very confused. What would a 17-year-old girl and her boyfriend want from a custom shop that only sells umbrellas and other winter items in the middle of summer, and I also knew that she wasn't invited to my cousin's birthday because she didn't even know my cousin. By that point, I was convinced she was following me around. Senior year swings around, and Patricia starts trying to talk to me again, and I was having none of it, considering the obvious reasons. Then the day before spring break, she said to me, "I've seen that you've been ignoring me, and I really don't appreciate it. I am such a good friend." Me: "Honestly, Patricia, you're really not. You're kind of manipulative." Patricia: "How can you say that? I'm really good to you." Me: "I beg to differ." Then I walked away. She would shoot daggers at me when I saw her after that, and Patricia was also extremely jealous. When Patricia saw Dave talking to a girl, she would walk up to him and say, "How could you cheat on me with this bitch?" Friend, who was still semi-friends with Patricia, had Dave's story sent to her by Patricia. Basically, he posted a story on his Snapchat that said, "With the most supportive person in my life," over a picture of him and a girl, and Patricia went nuts. She complained to her friend that her boyfriend was cheating on her with who she called that ugly bitch. Turns out that was his sister. Fast forward a few months when crap hit the fan. I was partnered up with Dave in my chemistry class that we had together. Patricia learned about this and went berserk. She had the nerve to come up to me and say, "Keep you filthy hands off of my boyfriend Beach." So a week after that happened, Dave had to come over to my house to finish the last part of the project. Turns out Patricia was planning to go to the mall with Dave that day, but he had to cancel to come to my house. Patricia was steaming. So the next fateful day, I was in class with Dave, and we turned in our project. We were talking about what grade we'd think we'd get when Patricia came in with these big scissors. Neither Dave nor I saw her coming. That day, I was wearing my hair in a low ponytail. At this point, I was growing out my hair, and it was very important to me since I had to shave my head in 8th grade after an accident. I had a hard time reviving my locks, and I was proud, until then. So, on account of a mutual friend, who was also in the class, and Dave, Patricia came up behind me, pulled my hair, and cut it to about shoulder length. At first I didn't know what happened, but when my brain had processed my snip sound, I knew what had happened. I whipped my hair around and stood up, and there was B, holding my hair in one hand, and the scissors in the other. Here's the dialogue. Me: "Did you just cut off my hair?" Patricia then dropped my hair on the floor and said, "That what you get for sleeping with the boyfriend Beach?" Then Patricia proceeded to slap me across my face. It didn't hurt, but I was angry. I looked down at Patricia's hand, and it looked like she was getting ready to slap me again. So I did what was necessary and socked her square in the nose. All I heard was a deafening crunch, and her hitting the lament. Then she started screaming, "She hit me, get her arrested." Next thing I know, I was in the principal's office, explaining what happened and all my previous experiences with Patricia while waiting for my mom to get to the school. I was also very emotional because all my hard work to grow out my hair had been foiled. Principal: "So, what you're saying is that Patricia came into the room, cut off your hair, and slapped you because you were doing things with Dave, correct?" Me: "That's about right." Principal: "Okay, so how about you wait here for your mother?" 10 minutes later, my mom walks in and starts getting angry when she sees my hair because she knows how long it took to grow it all back. The principal quickly briefs the situation to her, and she gets even more heated. Basically, I was suspended for a week. I still don't know why I was suspended, even though I was just defending myself. We were told to come to the school for a meeting with Patricia and her family and all the witnesses the next day. So, the next day we walk in and we are guided to a big conference room with a big rectangular table in it. We were seated directly across from Patricia and her Karen mother. They were both shooting us dirty looks. Also, there was the mutual friend Dave, another friend of Patricia, and Principal. Principal recounts Patricia's side of the story first. She accused me of attacking her with my fists. When the principal asked why my hair was cut off, Patricia said that she grabbed scissors and cut off my hair so I would stop. There are many reasons why that makes no sense, such as the fact that when the principal came into the room, she was still laying on the floor from my punch, so there's no way she could have cut my hair off after I punched her. Also, 26 other people said that she attacked me first. Then the Karen mother speaks up. "That wild animal attacked my daughter and broke her nose. She deserves to be in jail." Then my mom spoke up. "No, your daughter attacked mine and cut off her hair." Karen: "That's not true. My little angel is innocent." Mutual friend: "I saw Patricia cut off all of her hair, so that's not true." Karen: "This is bullcrap. You just paid all these people to lie about this." Dave: "It's true. Patricia attacked first." Patricia: "You're supposed to be my boyfriend L and support me." Dave: "Not anymore. I'm breaking up with you." Patricia: "What?" Patricia then starts bawling her eye holes out, and I was trying to hold in my laughter. So was the mutual friend. Karen: "You don't even have any proof that Patricia did anything." Lisa, Patricia's ex-friend: "Actually, that's why I'm here. I recorded everything." Turns out Patricia told Lisa what she was doing, and Lisa had enough of Patricia's crap and recorded everything she had done. Lisa then played the video, and it clearly displayed my side of the story to a T. Karen: "This video is doctored to make Patricia look bad." Principal: "Well, everyone and everything says otherwise, Karen." Principal then turns to me and asks, "Would you like to press charges against her?" Of course I said yes. Principal then reached out to the police and let me and my mom file a complaint and press charges. The Sunday before I get to go back to school, my mom gets a letter in the mail telling me that we're getting sued for $50,000 for assault. We immediately got an attorney and looked into this.